Network, where we have a local feel and a global reach. My name is John Jacobs, Director of K-12 and at Up Partnership here in San Antonio, the Bexar County area. I'm joined here with two extraordinary professionals, Dr. Jessica Moreno and Dr. Laura Scott, and we are here to do a book review, a book highlight on a book entitled Advocating for Educational Change, Reimagining Student Discipline Through Restorative Practices. We're going to jump right in it because we got a little bit of time. We want you to hear from these great authors, co-authors of this amazing book. We're going to start out, if you'd like to introduce yourself before answering the question, but can you both take us back to the beginning? What experiences in your professional journey led you to write this book, and why does it need to exist right now? Dr. Scott?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Jacobs, for having us. And we want to thank also Miss Laura Thompson and the African American Network for platforming and amplifying the voices of our mission. It's critically important at this juncture that we recognize and respect the things that are going on in our school system, right? And we understand that within the school system, we have those who are having baneful effects by a lot of the actions that are happening from stakeholders, school leaders, teachers, faculty, community, everyone, right? So what we wanted to do is we wanted to write a book. In fact, Dr. Moreno, she's the lead author, write a book about how we can address one of the biggest things that are happening to our students, particularly our Black and Brown students, and that's exclusionary discipline, right? Pipeline to prison. So we wanted to talk about how are we going to disrupt that pipeline to prison. So I've been a teacher, a coach, a school counselor, an administrator, and I participated in creating that pipeline, at times before I started looking at the data. And so one of the things now as a professor, I write about it, I teach about it, and I prepare a cadre of principals and superintendents to make sure that, what is the data telling you when you're looking at your data, when you're looking at your suspension data, when you look at your counseling data, what is the data telling you about the students? Are we conversing and connecting with the parents? And then are we making sure that when the data is saying, suspend the kid, is there an alternative? And I'm going to talk about some of the alternatives that we did use. I don't want to capitalize too much because I want to give Dr. Moreno her due as definitely as a primary author. But are we also, culturally, are we also training the teachers and faculty and staff on culturally responsive and competence, making sure that they understand cultures? And then are we being intentional, right? Are we being intentional with our resources? So are we appropriating dollars to make sure that students are getting what they need to succeed? Are we creating mentoring programs and interventions? Are we inviting organizations like churches and 100 Black Men? I know, when I was an administrator, we had Alamo City Qs and the Deltas coming to school and many others. Are we aggregating and bringing in resources that are going to intentionally help our students disrupt this pipeline? So that's what this book is really about. This book is really about how are we going to build the relationships, look at the data specifically, and then provide the training necessary to address the needs of every single student, and particularly as it relates to disaggregated data to disrupt the discipline pipeline to prison.
Love it. Thank you for that, Dr. Moreno. Same question. You have a unique story. This is you're the content expert. Can you share a little more of how we got to this point of even birthing this book?
Yes, I also want to start off by saying I'm incredibly honored to be here and to be here with the two of you, especially. I'm Jessica. I have 16 years in education now. This book grew directly out of my lived experience in a secondary disciplinary alternative education program, or a DAEP. For 10 years, I worked with students who had already been removed from their home campuses, students who were often labeled defiant, disruptive, problematic.
Mm.
And what I saw over and over again were young people whose behaviors were being punished, but whose underlying needs were never being addressed. And so when I began studying restorative practices more deeply and later conducted my doctoral research, I realized something really powerful, and that's the system wasn't just disciplining students, it was often excluding them from opportunity. And
Mm.
so this book needed to exist right now because schools are still relying heavily on exclusionary discipline, and we now have both research and practice-based evidence that shows there is a better way.
Thank you for that. There's absolutely a better way. Before we go any further, we'd love to know who's joining us tonight. So in the chat, or if you're watching this online, can you let us know what sector you're representing? Are you an educator? Are you a school leader? Are you a nonprofit professional? Are you a policymaker? Are you just a professional? Are you a parent? Are you a parent? We love parents, right, in this space. And are you a community member? Are you a student? So in the chat, please let us know what you're representing. Let's get back into this book. Both of you come to this work as a scholar practitioner. For viewers who may be new to restorative practices, can you share a little bit about your professional journeys and what experience that gives you the authority to talk about restorative practices? Dr. Moreno?
Yep. So I approached this work, like you said, as a scholar practitioner. I've served as a teacher, both general and special education. I was in the classroom for almost 10 years. I served as a testing coordinator, an assistant principal, a national trainer in restorative practices, and a researcher completing a mixed methods case study grounded in social justice. I've implemented restorative practices both in the classroom and as an administrator on my campus with my students and my teachers. I've coached educators through resistance. I've studied outcomes, and I've trained districts on systems alignment. My authority comes not just from theory, but having navigated discipline systems from inside them.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Scott, would you like to answer that question?
Absolutely. So listen, it's not enough to research the information, nor is it enough to just simply act, right? We have to marry and meld the theory and the practice, the theorists and the practitioners. So I have over 25 years of experience as an educator, 17 years again as a teacher, coach, counselor, central office curriculum writer, and now professor. And the goal has always been, how do we get scholars to interface with practitioners? Now, listen, this is my third book, and I have over 25 publications on how to reach students in urban education. But the goal has always been, how are we going to marry theory and practice?
Mm.
So one of the things I saw is, we don't have access to, ready access to research and journals, right? Without having to go through a paywall, right? Unless you're working on your post-secondary degree, your doctorate, or whatever. And so a lot of people don't know that, you Google Scholar is free. You can just type in Google Scholar, and then from there you can do research. AI, right? The integration of AI, Perplexity is another good way, right? Are we also in our trainings, professional developments and professional learning communities, are we integrating current research? One of the things I love about Dr. Moreno, me and Dr. Moreno, we've done this practice as administrators at the same school, actually, at our partner school, is we would integrate, and we currently do that now when we go into schools, integrate current research, because we know that we live in an ever-changing and evolving world, and
Mhm.
the challenges of 10 years ago ain't the challenges that's happening to our students today, right? Uh, Before, it was maybe some learning deficits or bullying or even deficit thinking from teachers. But now with AI, our students are being left behind. Even our teachers are being left behind. So are we making sure that our teachers are adequately trained using current research? And then do we have access to that research? And then lastly, going back to restorative practices, what are we doing about our frequent flyers? What are we doing about
Mhm.
our special challenging angels that come in, right,
Mhm.
all the time? And then here's the thing: what are we doing about those teachers who continue? I had a teacher that wrote 30 referrals a day. What are we doing about those teachers who constantly creating that pipeline to prison for students?
Mhm.
Are we giving teachers a break, or are we making a big mistake?
I love that. I love that. And since we're on this conversation about restorative practices and its fidelity, there's one critique, and it always kind of irks me as a practitioner and a backbone support in our community for restorative practices. But there's one critique that sometimes that we hear that restorative practices are soft on discipline. Your work suggests the opposite, Dr. Moreno. The restorative approach actually requires structure, facilitation, and skill. Can you talk a little more about the level of training and intentional systems required to implement restorative practices well?
Yeah, so restorative practices are a structured framework for building relationships. Um, I think that in addition to building relationships, they're also set to repair harm, create accountability through dialogue. They're proactive and they are responsive. So, both. They can be used in both a proactive and responsive way. They're not ignoring behavior, they're not eliminating consequences or being nice instead of being firm. And I think that is a common misconception. When we talk about restorative practices, we have so many people who have attempted restorative practices and used them incorrectly or haven't put the work into really training their staff or looking into how they can better serve their children on their campus with restorative practices. And so then it looks like, well, this doesn't work. Or we have the candy consequences, right? Where, oh, restorative practices, they just go to the principal's office and then they come back to my class with a lollipop. I've seen it, I have experienced it myself. And so I think that the big idea behind it is that it's structured, it's facilitated, it does require significant time and skill. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody off. I'm saying that you put the time in on the front so that you get your time back in the end.
Thank you for that. Dr. Scott, do you want to expound on some of the common misconceptions you encountered when discussing restorative justice, restorative practice in schools?
Right. So again, to Dr. Moreno's point, it is about the relationships, right? Relationships are going to be critical and crucial. But one of the things I did here is it's again it's softening the land for students, but it's not addressing the symptoms of a larger problem. To Dr. Moreno's point, it's the student goes to the office, and as an administrator, we're conversing with them and not taking care of the needs of the student necessarily to where they feel, if you will, for a better word, rehabilitated, but they feel like they are taking ownership and onus of the behaviors that they've committed. And then we're sending them back to the classroom, same time, like she said, with a candy. So that now the teacher feels unsupported, right? That is a big misconception. One of the
Mhm.
things that we implement in restorative practices is it's a holistic approach. It's not a one size fits all. It's a surgical looking at what are the particular needs. If you have a student act out, I had a student when I was at one of my schools who he kept acting out, and the teacher sent him to my office, and she didn't understand. Like he keeps acting out. Well, just taking a little time, you found out that his brother was shot and killed the night before in a gang shootout. Okay, so I had another student who, I have tons of stories, but I had another student who was sleeping in class all the time, and I remember the teacher would constantly send him to the office every morning. Yeah, I don't understand. He can't be in here. He's always sleeping. Well, come to find out, the student was taking his mom. I'm sorry, picking up his mom while taking his 5-year-old sibling daughter. I'm sorry, sister, picking up his mom from the strip club every night.
Mm.
Okay, ninth grader, no license. Okay, and so you're worried about him not being able to sleep. I'm worried about, of course, CPS got involved, but I'm worried about his well-being, his psycho-emotional, social-emotional well-being, right? And so
Mhm.
what restorative practices does is it builds it demystifies the practice because it builds a coalition of restorative thinking, right?
Mm.
Not deficit thinking leaders that these students can't learn, these students can't, be rehabilitated, these students can't make, become successful. It is attracting, training, and retaining a coalition of people who, can come in and say, what is surgically wrong with the student, and then how can we surgically remove those barriers to make sure that they are successful. And again, when I'm talking about a coalition, I'm talking about counselor, social worker, teachers, parents, community leaders, uh, principals, and leaders, instructional leaders. Everybody are working in tandem to make sure the student gets that particular student gets what they need to succeed.
I love that. Dr. Moreno, in the book, you make a powerful statement that restorative practices are not replacement for accountability. They are accountability. Can you expand on that idea? What does that true accountability look like within a restorative practice framework?
Yes, absolutely. So traditional discipline often asks what rule was broken and what punishment is deserved, like what consequence are we going to give for this infraction, right? Restorative discipline asks who was harmed, what do they need, and how do we repair this? And so I have found that punishment may stop the behavior temporarily, but development using those restorative practices builds internal responsibility and the ability to take accountability, right? It helps students understand the impact of their actions, not just on themselves, but on others as well. And so they're less likely to repeat the behavior because they genuinely understand the consequence and not just because they fear the punishment.
Mm, I love that. At Up Partnership, we use the term and we backbone the work of My Brother's Keeper. Shout out to My Brother's Keeper here in
Yeah.
San Antonio and national. That we're going from punishment to healing. And when you use the word healing, you realize that there has been some trauma that's come along with it, right? And more educators should consider themselves as healers, right? For many students coming in, and you heard Dr. Scott's example of stories that are coming, they're going through a lot of issues, and so that healing is necessary in regards to that student to be successful. Um, Both of you balance scholarship and practice. Can you share with our viewers a time in your work where you saw restorative practice truly transform a situation? Dr. Scott, you gave an example. Dr. Miranda, do you want to give an example of a situation where it transformed a relationship or even a school culture? We talk about that in our Restorative Practice Academy, that we're really trying to transform school culture. Can you give an example of that?
Yes, I would love to. So I worked at a traditional middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. Our entire administrative team was new. We were brought in to help rebuild trust with the campus, with the teachers, the students, with the community members. And one one of the things that I really found was implementing restorative practices gave us a window into our kids' lives. It allowed us to see what them and their families were going through. It allowed our teachers to build relationships with the kids as well, but it allowed them to facilitate relationships between the students. So
Mm,
we saw less discipline issues, less behavioral issues. We absolutely, I don't want to make it sound like we didn't have any problems because we did. We absolutely had behaviors that we had to take care of, but they were further apart and less frequent. So I really feel that after the pandemic, when we came back, TEA had said, we're only going to rate certain schools, and you have to be above this certain rating. We were the only middle school in that district that rated that year, and my teachers worked so hard to do that, and so much credit to them. They are all amazing individuals. They didn't just work hard on academics, they worked hard on building that foundation of community for the kids. And these kids had spiraled up throughout the years. And even during the pandemic, the teachers were still doing restorative practice, community building activities in the virtual classrooms. And so we watched our academic rate increase, and we watched our behavioral disciplinary rate decrease. And it was really just amazing to see.
awesome. I want to expound on that question. Can you share a little more? Either one can talk about the importance of teacher and leadership buy-in to restorative practices on a campus.
Yeah, if I may, Dr. Moreno and I, we worked again at our DAEP, right? That's the District Alternative Education Program. And one of the things we saw is, in order to be effective, we had to show the teachers that it's possible. So one of the things we did under our principal, Donnie Whited, is that we were actually, as as the actual leadership, leading the restorative circles. That way, we're able to demystify the process. Too many times in our district, in many of our districts, we'll adopt a program and we'll adopt it for a few years, capture the ethos, spend a couple of millions, and then do away with the program and try to,
Mhm.
still maintain it with fidelity. Well, this isn't that kind of program, right? This is an all-in program, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things we did is we were able to model for the teachers. This is how you run your restorative circles. This is how you make everyone feel, uh, impacted, or everyone feel a part of the educational program. And as you mentioned before, let's look at context, right? Let's look at the research. Yes, there's a lot of students, particularly our Black and Brown students, who are disproportionately put in special ed programs, but not having the same access to AP and GT programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do we have for those students? I created a mentor program called Boys to Men, and I'll talk about that later, for those frequent flyers. And instead of suspending them, we were doing graffiti abatement. So instead of suspending the kid, you come on Saturday and you help me clean up the graffiti. And then what happened is the teachers would see, wow, I can't believe Johnny, Jose, Hakeem was able to, come on a Saturday and actually clean the graffiti. I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of his healing. And so that's one of the way we got the buy-in is we actually modeled it for the teachers. And then we took students that they traditionally saw were, behavioral challenges, and showed them that that particular student, given the right situation, will succeed.
If you're just joining us, you're tuned into the African American Network, where we have a local feel and a global reach. I'm speaking with Dr. Jessica Moreno and Dr. Lauren Scott. They just recently released their book, Advocating for Educational Change, Reimagining Student Discipline Through Restorative Practices. And we're just having a conversation with the authors. And I want to pause here. If you're watching this live, please share this, tag a friend, tag an educator, tag a principal, a superintendent, a family member. This is a book you want to get, and this is a conversation that they need to have. And so we're going to keep going in our conversation. I work again for a backbone organization that does system work. And so I have a question from your perspective. What does it take for a community to adopt a true system approach across sectors? Because I believe this belongs to not just the educational system, but it belongs to everyone, all sectors, like the education and justice system. So restorative practice aren't just implemented, but actually move it into the culture in a way that promotes healing. So from your perspective, what does it take for a community to adopt a true system approach?
Oh,
Dr.
okay.
Anyone can jump right on in.
Dr. Reno, or
Go ahead, Dr. Scott.
sure, no problem. Well, one of the things that I have at the university, I have a program called Best of Both Worlds, and what that is, it's a integration of best of both worlds, theory and practice. So there I have theory that is produced. I have researchers. I have, but then also I have practitioners, right? I have um, policymakers, practitioners, leaders, community leaders, all coming together to see how can we allocate and consolidate our resources. So one of the things that we look at is how are these things funded, right? The commissioner's court, the legislature, city council, two on
Mhm.
one United Way. These are ways that, again, these are ways to integrate. Of course, grant writing from the professorate. These are ways to integrate funding and resources that are not necessarily tapped into. I just want to, if I may, go back a little bit and talk about how the community is integrated in this process. When Dr. Moreno and I were at the DAEP, we had a 97%, I might be getting this wrong, 7% recidivism rate. 97%. I'm getting mixed up, but only 7% came back. uh, so basically, what I noticed is that um, we operated on a point system, but we also had teams. We also had, we saw that students were, they were come in and they would be in rival gangs, but when they came there, they were in teams and they became brothers. But here's the surgical part: 97%. This is what I want. 97% of our students, about 85% of our students were there for drug-related offenses. So if
Mhm.
you have the vast majority of the students there for drug-related offenses, why are we doing a one size fits all? So what the restorative practices did is it allowed us to say, let's look at the prescription. The prescription is let's bring in drug abatement programs. Let's bring in Palmers. Let's bring in Center for Healthcare Services. Let's bring in San Antonio Council on Alcohol and Drug Awareness. right? Let's bring in the counseling therapy dogs, and different ways. A community garden. We had a community garden in which students were able to learn how to garden and then build the garden, and from the garden we're able to feed the community, right? So they're contributing to something bigger than themselves. And so again, that's how we're able to see how can we integrate the community and get them involved in the healing process for our students.
So you can see, folks that are listening in, that restorative practice is both an art and a science that sits on top of a mental model shift, right? And so it is a art and a science that you should read on, you should study on, and this book will give you that information. Dr. Moreno, for educators, school leaders, and community partners watching tonight, and I hope they're watching this. If they're not, please reshare this broadcast. um, who want to be, they want to begin implementing this sort of practice. They really want to, they say, okay, Dr. Moreno, Dr. Scott, this is awesome, this is wonderful, but how do you do this? You sound very passionate, but how do you do this? What are 2 or 3 first steps they should take and they should consider when they want to implement restorative practices?
Yes, what a great question. And I love this because it's something that can be started almost immediately, right? So I would say for practical takeaways, your first step should be invest in training before implementation. If you don't know how to do it, you may not do it up to the standard that you would like, your teachers would like, your kids need, your district requires. Start with community building activities. Don't just jump right into harm repair and restorative circles and asking them to, give you their life stories, because kids don't talk to people that they don't know, and they don't talk to people or trust people that they don't like, right? Model with the adults on your campus. When I talk about modeling, I mean, in your faculty meetings, administrators start using those community building activities with your teachers and embed them in your practice.
Absolutely.
Because when you embed them in what you already have, it makes it so much more easier and it feels more natural to others. And then when you audit discipline data, do it through an equity lens. So you want to begin proactively and not reactively. Like, this is a problem we have to solve right now. Throw restorative practices at it, right? You want to take some time to really understand what it is that you're going to be implementing, because what you don't want is another white binder that just gets thrown on the bookshelf and collects dust and spider webs and all that. So I do want to say, I would be remiss in saying that if you are here in Central Texas, your regional service centers offer departments that are dedicated to supporting districts and implementing restorative practices. Region 20 specifically has consultants that are available to assist you with that. Up Education hosts a restorative practices cohort that is fantastic. I've had the pleasure of being in there with them a couple of times, and it's always so much good information and practical application. Ed Tomorrow is a restorative practices company that offers a free daily resource right into your email inbox. It's called The First Five. And so you can sign up for that, and they will shoot you community building activities based on if your kids are in primary or secondary school, and then you get to choose like which ones you want to use, but they give them out every day. And that is a phenomenal resource for starting out with community building activities. Each of these resources is a great place to begin exploring restorative practices.
I love that. Dr. Scott, Dr. Moreno, we are actually at our closing. We're already wrapping up. 30 minutes went by really fast. But as we close, what is one message you hope readers and listeners today take away from advocating for educational change? We'll start with Dr. Scott.
Yes, sir. So one of my favorite quotes ever is Dr. Renee Rochester. She says, "You can count the number of seeds in one apple, but you can never count the number of apples in one seed." Again, you can count the number of seeds in one apple, but you can never count the number of apples in one seed. Another quote that I love from one of my favorite people in the world, Pastor Keith Graham, he says, "Success is measured in succession, that your kids, grandkids should be able to feel the impact that you're making today."
Mm.
So what we want to leave with everyone is you have the opportunity to seed in other people's lives. You have the opportunity to create systems that will catapult our students from all communities to success. But it's gonna take work. It's gonna take everyone consolidating their resources, working together. It's gonna take myself in higher ed. It's gonna take that pipeline working with K-12, and it's gonna take a consolidation of people who can be adequately trained to go into the school systems and care about the students. Because at the end of the day, like I tell my students who are studying to be principals, you're not just the principal of that school. You are the principal of that community.
Mm.
Okay, so it's going to take people that are not just going in and saying, "I want to be a principal, I want to be a school leader, or I want to go because I want the title or more money," but you actually want to make a difference and make an indelible impact in the lives of students. So yes, please, we're asking you get the book. Obviously, get the book. Find out about resources that are available to you. But more importantly, make sure yourself that you are ready to embark on a foundational way to make an indelible impact, and not just the lives of that student, but that family and the community.
Dr. Moreno?
Yes, thank you. So, restorative practices do not eliminate consequences, they deepen them and they transform consequences into learning experiences rooted in empathy, responsibility, and repair. And when educators commit to this approach, they become more than rule enforcers. They become relationship builders, culture shapers, and interrupters of inequity. And sometimes they become that one adult who changes the trajectory of a student's life, not because they excused harm, but because they refused to give up on the human being who caused it. And that is the true heart of this work. Restorative practices help educators um, become that adult, because they slow us down long enough to listen, and they require us to listen before we assign a label to a student. And so when we create space for student voices, we send a powerful message that you matter here, even when you make mistakes. And when students believe they matter, everything changes. And I'm also going to end with a quote, and that is, change is a ripple effect, and we are the stones. And so, whatever that means to you, I hope that you take this information and you ripple out and touch others with it.
Thank you, Dr. Moreno. Thank you, Dr. Scott. Dr. Scott, do you want to announce your event, Best of
Oh,
Both Worlds, to the audience?
absolutely. I wish we could share a screen, but you can go to obviously on our Facebook page, Texas A&M San Antonio Educational Leadership page. But it's called Best of Both Worlds, and it's going to be April 8th from 6:30 to 8. We have quite a bit of people that are going to be a part of it. We have Commissioner Calvert, Tommy Calvert, who I don't know if people know, but he's been the longest standing commissioner, and he's given so much, money towards disrupting the pipeline of prison. So we have Commissioner Calvert, we have uh, Representative Campos, we are, tons of people. I'm sorry, I can't think of everybody right now. Young Men's Leadership, Derek Brown, the principal, Derek Brown, Young Men's Leadership, and so many others. And so, please, we're asking that you take this time to attend, but come willing to be changed, because as Dr. Moreno said, we're trying to make we're trying to shake pavement. We're trying to make a ripple effect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for joining us as we had a conversation with the authors of the book, Advocating for Educational Change, Reimagining Student Discipline Through Restorative Practices. Please go online, Google it, save it, and buy it. And then, of course, check out all our social media platforms, specifically our LinkedIn. Both the authors are very engaged online, so please connect with them on LinkedIn, myself as well. Thank you so much for your time. You have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.